there was a shooting in Minneapolis. Renee Good, I think she was 37 years old, was shot down by an ICE officer. And she's dead. What's amazing about the video and also people's reaction is how so many people can watch the same video and yet come to completely opposite conclusions. How is that possible? Like why does that happen?
Well, it seems obvious to me there are some people who want to defend the government. And I don't know any other simple way to put it. They want to defend the government. They want the government to be right. Anybody who protests, and these were protesters, this was a protester who was killed. And especially, some branches of the government that some people favor more than others. For example, the people who are now saying that the ICE agent was right and has justified and was self-defense and all these other I regard as implausible theories. If this had been a child protective services person who was trying to take away the child from a parent who didn't want the child to be transgendered, and the government was trying to take the child to be transgendered, the same people who are saying the ICE agent was justified would say the complete opposite for a pro-transgender government agent. So it just depends on which government you want to support. But I think that's what's going on here. There are people who just want to support the government, and they don't like the protesters, and they line up on political reasons, not for legal reasons,
Yeah.
not for what's in the video, but for political reasons.
It kind of goes back to this idea of having a political bias, what we talked about that the other day. And depending on what kind of political bias you have, when you see the evidence, when you see the video, you come with an interpretation that you kind of believe what you want to believe out of it. Is that kind of what takes place?
People bend the facts in order to make the facts fit their theory or fix their presupposition or fit their allegiance or whatever it is.
Yeah,
They bend the facts.
because you have a citizen, and you have a public soldier, and it's just interesting. It seems like there's one morality for the private citizen, and then there's another morality that exists for the soldier. And it's like, why does that exist? Like, why is it okay for him to kill her? And like, it's just like I don't understand why that's okay just because he has a badge on.
Well, the point is, like I said, if she had killed a if she, now it turns out she was a lesbian, I understand. If she had been a homeschooling Christian pro-Trump person, and the ICE agent was somebody who was going to take her child and transgender the child, and she shot the ICE kidnapper, I mean, because he's going to kidnap her child, the same people who were okaying the ICE guy would say, no, in this case, she would be right to kill the transgender government agents. So it's just whatever your bias is, you're going to frame the evidence, you're going to mold the evidence, twist it, shape it, spin it, bend it in order to fit what you want.
Yeah.
People bend the evidence to fit what they want to be true.
There's no way out of that cycle then. If we're all just stuck in this political game, it's just who we're all like everyone's trying to battle for power. Everyone's trying to battle for that gun that they want violence in their name according to how they see it. So what's the solution to that?
Well, the solution is you have to get rid of the idea that it's okay for you to hire or vote for or support people who are using violence, people who are using guns. The Republicans want to gain the power of the public sector gun in order to impose their will on the Democrats, and the Democrats are trying to get a control of the machinery of the gun to impose their will on the Republicans. They're both trying to impose their will on the other side by force. You have to get rid of that. That is not a legitimate option to impose your will on other people by force. You have to say, the only way I can impose my will, the only way I can get people to change their minds is to persuade them,
Yeah.
to give them good arguments, to give them good evidence, and to help them see what's really true. And of course, it works both ways because, as I say, both people are bending the facts so that it fits their agenda, and both have the same agenda in different directions. I want to find a way to impose my will on other people by force or threats of violence. So it's the violence angle that's really
Yeah.
tripping everybody up.
That really seems to be the core issue. like the violence, and we need to that's the thing that we need to reject at a fundamental level. We need to be radical in that sense. To be radical means to get something by the root, and it seems like this obsession with we want to control the strong arm of violence, and do things in whatever name, you know, and these people want to control this violent thing over here. It's just like, but that just never ends. There's no end to that idea. And it sounds like that's the thing that must be rejected in order for there to be true change in our world, to come into a whole new and better place.
Right, right. I think that's one of the central issues of the human race today, because otherwise we're going to start setting off some nukes and annihilate the whole human race or billions of people if we don't get this issue. It's never right to impose your will on other people by force. I'd like to think that I'm sort of objective in looking at the evidence in this case because I don't really have a dog in the fight. I don't support ICE. I really don't support protesters. I mean, I'm anti-government in that sense. But on the other hand, you've got a lot of commands in the Bible to be respectful of the people, to honor them, to give them what they want, bless them, pray for them. Your attitude is sort of positive toward people who are doing evil. Jesus says, resist not evil, but he says, pray for the evil people.
Yeah.
So our attitude is on the one hand, we're saying, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I want to kind of like walk beside you rather than confront you directly. I want to walk beside you and try to help you see that your job of imposing your will on other people by force and threatening them with violence, that's not a good thing. But I'm here
Yeah.
to support you, really. I'm here to support you. Just I don't support what you're doing. I don't support your
Yeah.
acts of violence, but I
And
support
that
you as a human being.
And that doesn't seem like what Renee Good was doing. And she definitely doesn't seem like she was like subjecting herself to the powers that be, and obeying her, like obeying authority, or, but, and so people tend to think if you're for the shooter, or if you're against what the shooter did and you think he was wrong by shooting her, then you are somehow for Renee, that you're somehow like Renee was all in the right. But that's not necessarily true. If even if Renee, the point is even if Renee is totally wrong in what she's doing, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden now he has some kind of right to kill her in cold blood.
Right. It's like what I'm hearing. I don't watch Candace Owens. I don't watch Ben Shapiro. I don't watch some of those podcasters. I have a couple of favorite podcasters, but those aren't them. And I hear the argument is if you don't oppose the person that I oppose, then I must oppose you, even though they're basically on the same side. I mean, this is what I get from what I'm hearing. Ben Shapiro is saying to Megyn Kelly, if you don't oppose Tucker Carlson having Fuentes on his show, then I must oppose you. You're no longer my friend because you don't oppose the people I oppose. And in this case, we got people who are on the side of the government, on the side of ICE, or they're against immigrants. And
Yeah.
so therefore they're against the protesters of ICE. And they say, if you don't see it my way, if you don't line up with my idea, if you're not on my side, on the side of my home team, then I have to be against you. And they're both against each other. Both parties here are, in a sense, in the wrong because one person is imposing his will by force and the other person is engaged in just taunting conflict and not trying to help the situation really.
Yeah.
Not there's no nobody here is trying to persuade the other.
Yeah.
The woman who was murdered was taunting and being, you know, mean and nasty and not helpful and not persuasive. And
Yeah.
so, it's just a mess.
It is a mess. And it's interesting that some people will claim that he was defending himself, like a self-defense thing. But when you look at the video, I don't get the feeling that it was in self-defense that he had to shoot her. That just doesn't seem like that's what's taking place. And he shot her not only once, but I didn't even realize it was three shots,
Yeah.
and annihilated her. And that
And
just
shots number 2 and 3 were from the side. He was standing at the side of the car, shooting in the driver's window. So there's no way anybody can feel any kind of a threat from a car when you're at the side of the car because cars don't normally move sideways.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you can say maybe his first shot was justified because he was afraid she was going to run over him, but the second two shots, He was in no danger. The danger had passed him at that point. It was
Yeah.
going past him.
Yeah, well, and then then he says like an effing B in response, like that's the words he used, which shows that like it wasn't like an act of self-defense, which would be more of an expression of like, oh, thank God I'm still alive. Like,
Right.
it's more, this was like an evil, mean-spirited thing.
It was a mean-spirited confrontation on both sides. They were egging each other on. They're both trying to play their game. And yeah, it was bad. Now my take on it from what I saw, they released a video from his phone, the shooter's phone. And what I saw was these women were taunting this man. So there's a sexual thing going on there. These women were taunting this man, and he was getting angered and frustrated by their uncooperative and unrespectful attitude. And they weren't obeying his command. And at one point, when he's on the passenger side of the car, he takes the phone out of his right hand and he puts the phone in his left hand so that he can grab his gun because he's going to threaten this woman with force because she's being uncooperative and disrespectful. Then, after he changes hands, then she starts leaving, which, supporters of ICE are saying that was an attack on him. She was trying to drive into him, but I think she was just leaving. And then, he dodged the car. He brushed up against the car, but he wasn't in any danger of his life being taken because he could easily step away. If she was actually trying to kill him with the car, he could have easily been avoid the death because he just stepped 2 steps away and he's to the side of the car. So I think at that point he was getting his gun out to threaten her and say, "You do what I tell you to," and threaten her life. I don't know whether he was. I mean, police do that. They get out their gun and they threaten you and they say, "Do what I say," as if I'm going to kill you if you don't. I remember an article by a Yale law professor his name was Stephen Carter, and he starts his constitutional law or whatever class it was by telling his students, they're all elites. They're Yale Law School. They're going to be in positions of power. That's why they're at Yale Law School. And he says, don't pass any laws that you're not willing to kill someone if they disobey, because that's the end result of every government law. First they'll send you a letter, then they'll send out somebody maybe to knock on your door, and then they'll send somebody with guns. And if you resist them, they're going to take it to the max. They are going to kill you because you disobeyed whatever law they didn't like you to disobey. And so he says, don't pass any law unless you're willing to kill someone, because that's what the government does. They kill people who defy the state. So this policeman or ICE agent, he was getting his gun out because he was going to threaten this woman for being disrespectful, uncooperative, whatever it is. So he had his gun out before she moved the car. That's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if she was going to run him over, you think she would go left. She was obviously
Absolutely right.
right.
I think
So,
that she turned her tires to the right because she was trying to leave the scene, which
right,
they didn't want her to do for some reason.
right. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a sad situation. It is a tragedy, like many people are saying. But I think it's important to remember that the core issue is that we shouldn't give them two types of moralities. Like, yeah, was she wrong for not obeying the powers that be, the soldiers, she's being disrespectful and stuff? Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that she should be executed for it at all. And so it's really a sad situation. And why isn't he? Is he also commanded to love his enemies? Like you don't love somebody by shooting them, right?
Right.
And so there's these two moralities that people have created, one for private, one for public. And depending on their presupposition and whether they believe in the legitimacy of government, they will just excuse the government soldier for getting to do what, obviously in this situation, murdering somebody, which is
You
terrible.
have to dehumanize the other side. That's what the government does. That's what the military does. That's what the police do. They dehumanize people. And I think the other side here was doing the same thing. The protesters dehumanized the ICE agents. They're just government robots. They're just killers. They're just not human beings. They don't have a family. They don't have children. They're all dehumanizing the other side. And so it makes it easy to be disrespectful or to even kill because they're not really human. They're not good. They're not on the right side. I get to kill them. And everybody I've seen who's defending the ICE agent is saying he has the right to kill. And that's the fundamental problem. Nobody has a right to kill. I mean, just plain and simple, nobody has a right to kill. Even in self-defense, You can try to defend yourself, but as a Christian, thou shalt not kill is the operative rule. In other words, set your phaser to stun instead of kill. It's a pretty simple switch there.
Yeah. And so this is the fundamental issue is this idea, thou shalt not kill, and whether we're going to choose violence in our society. And so this is something that needs to be addressed at a core level. And the only place where I can see both sides actually coming and meeting in the middle is to reject this whole power struggle of we want power, but no, we want power. How about rejecting it altogether? To me, that's the only way that we can actually move forward. And that's why I think Vine and Fig Tree has the correct worldview and approach to situations like this when we're trying to address tragedies like this, when the state is committing acts of violence. And Kevin, thanks for answering these questions. Do you have any last words or last thoughts on this Minneapolis shooting?
I think it might be the case. I'm just thinking this through on the spot here, but in order for us to convince people that they can't kill, I think it's important that we go back a further step and say both sides, we all have an obligation to treat the other guy as someone created in the image of God, a real human being whose life has value and who maybe has family, but it's just to treat people with respect. And of course, that works. Obviously, that's the command that the Bible gives to people who tend to be protesters and tend to don't like the government, is to treat them with respect, treat them as human beings, don't abstract them into tyrants or whatever like that. But of course, also the ICE agent. How are ICE agents ever trained in a Christian sense to love the protesters, to love their enemies, and to try to see these people have families, these people have friends? When you get out on the street like that, and when one side has got their guns out, it's just not a place for reasoned, compassionate, loving conversations. Both sides are out there for force. I mean, even the protests generally tend to be implicit violence, not explicit. Maybe they're not doing, but they tend to devolve into stone throwing or something like that. There's always this implicit violence because it's a collective. It's not an individual conversation between one human being and another human being with respecting they're both in the image of God. And, here's how God commands us to treat each other. But it's a group. It's a private sector group that's confronting the public sector, which is inherently a group. And this group mentality, it's always vengeance. If we get more power because our numbers are bigger, then we will be able to conquer you because we have more people, more force. It's just a situation of conflict. So,
Yeah.
but off the field, off the field of armed conflict, there needs to be a discussion about the fact that the people that we don't like because they're not on our side are still human beings and we have to treat them with respect. And even Jesus even goes farther. He says, love your enemies. And like I say, the police are never trained to love their enemies. And in fact, all people who I've seen supporting the ICE agent in this particular case, that's their view. No, police must not love their enemies, and they must be willing to empty their gun. They must just keep firing your gun until all the bullets are gone,
Yeah.
because that's how you protect yourself against people like this woman. I mean, I've heard them say that you're
Yeah.
morally obligated in a self-defense situation to kill, not to shoot to wound, not to shoot to slow down, but to shoot to kill. And I don't know. That's not Christian, I don't think.
No, it's some kind of psychosis that we need to snap out of and hope people can um, repent of that and have compassion roll over them and realize that the state itself is an evil thing and needs to be addressed. And also that we need to overcome evil with good and we need to love our enemies, whether we're on this side or that side. It's the command is to both people, to all people. So
Well, the state is particularly pernicious because it believes it has the right to engage in violence. It believes it has the right to put a gun to your head and say, give me your money so I can buy a new uniform. Or if you don't, I get to kill you. I mean, that's the state's mentality. It's murder and theft. It's a violation of those two core of the Ten Commandments. And it's also a violation of the command, leave vengeance to God. The state feels we don't have to do that. We don't have to obey Jesus. We don't have to obey the Bible. We have our own standard of law, which means we can kill people to get the job done. And that's what people are saying who are support. Not everybody, but I've seen some people defending ICE say that's the government's job. It's the government's right. And it's a myth. It's not a biblical concept.
It's a myth. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so please like and subscribe to the Vine and Fig Tree channel. This is another episode, a quick episode here on the Minneapolis shooting. Thanks, Kevin, for taking the time to address this current issue.